They're broken down and defeated, deterred, busy and confused, sleeping. You're dying while I wait you till it started. On the journey chosen, wasted, no selected. I was so bad, what happened? Fall out of the sky and crush me in my smile. I was so bad, what happened? Fall out of the sky and crush me in my smile. Sober, sad and jaded. They're not coming, they're broken down and defeated. You are dying while I wait you to get started. You are dying while I wait you to get started. I was so bad, what happened? Fall out of the sky, yeah. Crush me in my smile. I was so bad, what happened? Fall out of the sky and crush me in my smile.
I'm a motherfucking unicorn, a one-of-one. Divine being of love and light, the enlightened one. My karma is interstellar, I live by truth. Fighting evil, my scars are living proof. Protecting you from the storms with all my might. Love me, I will treat you right. You ever cross me, it's the last thing you'll ever do. With my crown of thorns, I'll wreck you. I ain't playing, yo, Bryan hard, call me a saint. Too bad Chris, because Bigfoot knows my name. I'm a messenger of God, with loyalty I serve, taking out all evil with his holy word. A true Knights Templar, sword in hand, slice you up, bury you in the sand. I'm a motherfucking unicorn, you'll never find anyone like me. Born in the Bronx, raised in NYC, so listen up, take heed. I float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. A true Knights Templar, sword in hand, slice you up, bury you in the sand. I'm a motherfucking unicorn, you'll never find anyone like me. Born in the Bronx, raised in NYC, so listen up, take heed. I float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Hello and welcome to Third Eye Live. I am your host, Bryan Bowden, sometimes known as Sir Bryan. I am actually a real Knights Templar. And I go by Sir Bryan M. Bowden or Sir Bryan, and the M for everybody's information is private, but we'll just call me McLovin because about half the state of Florida does. With that in mind, I'm going to bring in the producer, the guest getter, the author. He has a new book. Unfortunately, there's Mark Eddy right there. He's at a dinner party. He's in the witness protection program tonight. You can't see him. He's really there. And he's not wearing blackface, okay? Just so you know.
I'm in an Italian restaurant.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got all kinds of spaghetti.
Yeah. What kind of spaghetti?
Just all kinds of spaghetti going on behind me, being cooked, munching on it. It's just an investment I made after all the sales that from the autobiography you promoted last week, and Laura bought all the copies. You can't.
She did.
Yeah.
Laura, from what I understand, is either on her way or she's dealing with some familiar problems, which would be fine because you're in an Italian restaurant. Hopefully you're not in Louis in the Bronx and asking to go to the bathroom and then going in the bathroom and pulling out a revolver so you can take out somebody at your show. Where you are.
We don't want that. It's
no. We do not want.
But it could be a revolver taped behind the toilet with the chain.
Could be a revolver taped behind the toilet, but we'll figure that out. Mark has a new book out, and when Mark, the real problem with Mark is apparently there is a mudslide where he lives. And
there's a landslide.
Mudslide, Fleetwood Mac, whatever. And he lost all power, but thankfully he lives in a good neighborhood and he has good neighbors, and they're allowing him, to go to their neighborhood Chinese restaurant. Oh, sorry, Italian restaurant, and just be joining on the show. Originally, we were thinking about doing it through the phone, but it didn't work out, and I'm just happy you're here. But if it wasn't for Mark, we wouldn't have a scholar on Third Eye Live. Mark's pretty intelligent too, but we have this lovely lady we're going to bring in right here, and it's Shakespeare Suppressed. Please give a warm welcome to Katherine Chiljan, right? I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. And I want to
perfect. Okay, thank you.
Welcome to Third Eye Live. Totally different. When I started this show, just so you know, I started it by saying, what does your third eye, premonitions, gut feeling, how has that led you down a path to what you do today? And I mean, this is a hardy book, with a hardy subject. How did you, let's give a brief bio of yourself so everybody knows who you are and where you came from, and a little bit about yourself as a scholar. And then we'll get into, I've got a couple of questions prior to getting into whether did he or did not he? I have to say that. How many times have you probably heard that from somebody? Oh, here we go again. Shakespeare quotes.
Well, that's good. Yeah, actually today is the traditional celebration of Shakespeare, April 23rd.
And that's because, as I just found out, because I'm not a Shakespeare historian, as a high school person, I think everybody in my class would have been like, we're going to take him out by the end of the week, because we had to read a lot of Shakespeare, and then you have to go through the metering, and, it was just, can we just put this down to one play or something? Because it's a lot, and when you're looking at it in 20th century eyes,
this right here, it's just a path.
Not that we weren't sophisticated enough, because I think people are. And, but I'm just going to mute Mark for 2 seconds because it sounds like they're doing a drug deal. But but you understand what I'm saying? It's like, as we've gotten more into the 20th, 21st century, I think people, children, adults, young adults have lost part of their education and desire to know more. There's a couthness to how people operated back then with the book. But I put Mark back on, and I want to add your book to the stage so people can see this is the book, and the uncensored truth about Shakespeare and his works, which I mean, let me remove this for 2 seconds. I'm going to I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to remove you, Catherine. I apologize. I'm a one-man show at this point. Mark is nowhere to be found. But how did you get started in this? Like, are you a scholar of just literature, or what's your general background?
I am an independent scholar. I am not attached to a university, although I have a bachelor's degree in history from UCLA. And I learned about the authorship shortly after I graduated from UCLA. And what I did was I saw a debate between a Shakespeare scholar from a back east college, I don't remember, maybe Rutgers, and he was debating Charlton Ogburn, who wrote a book called The Mysterious William Shakespeare.
Oh.
And I knew nothing about this topic. And but I remember going back to high school, you were talking, I remember my English teacher mentioned when we were reading maybe Julius Caesar or Romeo in one of those plays, that some people think Shakespeare was Marlowe. And she meant Christopher Marlowe. That's all she said. But that one little phrase stuck in my brain. And then a few years later, I come across this debate. So I thought, I'm going to watch it. It's what Miss Haley was talking about. And all I could say is one man gives fact after fact after fact and makes perfect sense. And that's Charlton Ogburn. While the Shakespeare professor can give no facts at all. Really, all he can do is cast aspersions on Mr. Ogburn, saying, "Oh, it's like a mystery novel. It's a great story, but it's not true." And he could not defend who he believes is William Shakespeare. And we're talking about the man who was born in Stratford-on-Avon in 1616 on April 23rd. They think April 23rd. So
it was a while ago. I don't think they had the records. So
yes, and so that's when I became convinced, and I read the man's book after the debate, and I just wanted to tell everybody. And I did not go into the scholarly direction. I lived a normal life just with a regular job, but this was my sideline, and I'm just as passionate about it now as I was when I started.
That's great. I'm just going to tell Mark, if you can mute your mic yourself, go to the mute, and then when you want to speak, unmute. Perfect, because you have a hot mic right there. And although we're probably interested in what they're talking about in the background, we're talking Shakespeare right now, so we have to be a little bit more proper and polite. It's very interesting when you said that these literary individuals throw out like, oh, he wrote it, and that's just their defense. They have no background. They just take what has been, I guess, the narrative, and they've given it to them. But over time, if you start listening to others, there's a lot of people that feel, like, wow, this guy didn't write it. It just doesn't gel. Because if you have people working in literature, there's a lot of inconsistencies in the on the poetry side of the meter and on the phrasing. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's different poetic meters, and there's what Shakespeare used the most was blank verse. I'm not so much into the technical. I'm more interested in the historical. But it was a very complex way to write, and you really had to be talented to do what he did, and you had to have a lot of education, and you had to have um, life experiences um, that parallel the plays, and we don't have any known literary life for the person that that the professors accept as William Shakespeare. There's problems here. And this is not me. This is not me that just discovered this. This has been going on, this controversy, since the mid 1800s. The first book that came out was by Delia Bankin, and she had a theory that it was of many people writing Shakespeare. I'm not into that theory,
Right.
but to me, the greatest event in Shakespeare studies was in 1920, when a man named J. Thomas Loney came out with a book called Shakespeare Identified in the 17th Earl of Oxford. And he is the one
Oh,
who wrote, he was the man using the pen name William Shakespeare. And yet, if you ask an English professor today, they won't know that this book. And if you even bring up the topic, they will, if you're a student, they'll probably not give you a very good grade.
well, I mean, I would be fearful of that, Mike, Mark Hot Mike. There we go. I would be fearful of that, to come up and challenge the professor, because I've done it. I've done it in school. I've always done it. I don't really, I'm paying for the credit, so I will challenge you if I feel there's more to be researched on something. I'm not doing it just to be a pain in the rear, but it's very interesting. So the 18th century, this book comes out and really goes into how the Earl was it. Oh, I'm going to get my
1920. Sorry, 1920.
Oh, 1920.
Yes,
So
yes.
they found. So that was Marlowe. Was it Marlowe that was named that? There's a lot of the same in Shakespeare as in Marlowe, or was it because there's a bunch of people that were, kind of gotten attributes of like they wrote it. One of them, which is Sir Francis Bacon. Then there's Christopher Marlowe, Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford. I remember doing a lot of research, and for some reason, Sir Francis Bacon always, it just rings true for me, but I'm not the one that researched it. There's a lot about that man, a lot about him that I don't think many people know.
Well, it makes sense that Bacon, and he was an early candidate by people who doubted the Shakespeare authorship. And it makes sense because he was incredibly intelligent, and the great author of the Shakespeare works was also. He had a vast amount of knowledge, astronomy, the law, the Bible, heraldry, English history, French literature, Italian literature. The list is huge.
Right.
Whoever he was, he had an enormous education. So it makes sense that they would look at Francis Bacon as the one. However, he was not known as a playwright. And
Right.
he wrote a huge body of works that were philosophical and scientific. So it's kind of inconceivable that one man could have written that huge body of works and also the huge body of the Shakespeare plays, which, they say it's 40 plays he wrote, but it probably was more. There are a lot of early versions of the Shakespeare plays, probably about 50 plays he wrote.
Right.
And he wrote sonnets, and he wrote 2 long narrative poems. So this is, it couldn't have been done by one man.
Right. So, Mark, you go ahead.
Yeah, and Catherine, since you were just talking about 40 plays that are recognized, he didn't have all that long of a career, so he's cranking out a world masterpiece every few months. So
you mean for the Stratford Man?
Yeah, who
yeah,
who had no education. So how do
yes,
you do that? Something isn't adding up here, and even Mark Twain got into 10 years before Mr. Loney's Shakespeare Identified. He's Twain's getting into the traditional biography is not adding up.
yes, that was in Mark Twain's. He wrote in 1909, the book Is Shakespeare Dead? So he what really got him in was he couldn't understand how the Stratford man would have gotten access to law and know the law so well, which Shakespeare did. He really had to have been somebody who attended a law school. And they had several law schools back then. They called them societies.
Yep.
And that we have those enrollment records. And there's no William Shakespeare in them. We also have the enrollment records of Cambridge and Oxford universities, and there's no William Shakespeare there. We don't even know in the Stratford Grammar School. I mean, the professors say, yeah, he attended the grammar school, but there's no record. Unfortunately, for that period, they don't survive. So we can't say really one way or the other. But the professor will tell you that the Stratford man only attended till about age 12 or 13, and then he helped his father, like as a glover. So that, and the father, by the way, was illiterate, and the mother.
Well,
So
I
that
mean,
to me is
yeah,
not the best upbringing for a potential creative poetic genius.
right. I mean, forget Denmark. Something's not rotten in Stratford. So something is rotten in Stratford. It's very interesting. But one of the things that I thought about in preparing for the show and knowing enough that this man was poorer than poor. He was a peasant in all intents and purposes. But something I thought about is he may have been around these universities because, or working there. And the movie Good Will Hunting, where they have
I
this guy
didn't see it.
that's okay. Well, it's basically the premise is there's a kid that's basically blue collar. So he would be the peasant and he's working around Harvard and he just, and he fills in, he's super smart. He's picked up on all, he gets free college. So do you think in any way, shape or form, Shakespeare could have in certain instance got a free education by hanging out in the shadows and then saying, and then starting writing, or it was like, that's not possible?
Well, anything's possible, of course, but why don't you bring up the image of number one, A1?
Is that the signature one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to add that to the stage. There we go. Oh, wow.
So this is all we have in the handwriting of the Stratford man. We don't have any letters. We don't have any manuscripts. We have nothing except these. 3 of these signatures were on his will. All right. And the other 3, one was on a deposition, like legal documents. They're all from legal
Right.
documents. And if you look at them, it looks like he can barely hold a pen. It's so shaky. And the spelling of Shakespeare was all different. So this is not exactly the type of signature you'd expect for somebody who wrote very
Yeah.
refined, educated works. And back then, the surviving signatures we have on many documents, not just like literary people, they had like elaborate signatures with like little curves underneath or lines or things like that. It was kind of your own style. But I would say that these don't really qualify. So
No,
if you
it kind
want
of,
to answer your own question, I would say no, I don't think he picked up
no,
much.
that's actually great evidence right there. This kind of reminds me of my my oldest daughter. They didn't teach script, so she doesn't really. The kids of her generation don't know how to write script or read script, and it's actually really bad because then they can't read the U.S. Constitution, so it violates their constitutional rights and so on and so forth. But my youngest daughter has some script, and this reminds me of a child trying to autograph something. Like,
Yeah, a
this
child.
is someone who was, like a child, like uneducated. And I've seen this before because I have, I know a couple of people that play professional sports, and they're dynamite on the field, but they're illiterate. And some of them went back to school and they're doing a lot better now, and they can kind of keep up, and they're reading and, to better themselves. Others didn't care. They just cashed the check. But when they're writing on the check to sign it, it looks like, did your dog do this? So this alone as a piece of evidence on Shakespeare it screams that how can this guy?
Yeah. And notice how the name, it seems to be spelled like Shakespeer, Shaksper. None of these signatures are like the name that was printed, William Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So
How do you explain the world's greatest author misspelled his name multiple times on the same day that he's signing his will?
Yeah.
Right.
Doesn't add up.
Yeah. Good job.
Why don't you take a look at number 4 too? The Hamlet title page.
I think that's that. There is that the one, or?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
Can you maybe move in on the signature of William Shakespeare?
I wish I could, but let me.
I mean, I can see it, but
yeah, I think people can see it. I can't zoom in. They haven't figured that one out on this platform right now. I would add it through and then I could zoom in on it.
Well, if you notice, there's a hyphen between Shake and Spear.
Right.
And that occurred in about 50% of the time that the author's name was printed. And that is an indication of, and notice it's all in one line. It's not like it's continuing to the next line. That's an indication of a made-up name, spear shaking. And spear shaking was a known expression back then. It described jousting or like shaking your sword. It was more kind of a military expression. So when you shake your spear. So this is maybe give us a hint as to why this was chosen as a pen name, that the great author maybe was a jouster, which it turns out he was. So this is just to demonstrate that it really was a pen name.
Right. Go ahead, Mark. You can go ahead.
Okay, so if you're talking about jousting, like the village blacksmith wasn't involved in that. Is that a little bit more evidence that we're dealing with a person? The real author was a person from a totally different background than what we've been told.
Yes, good point. To be a jouster back then, it took a lot of money because you had to have not only your armor, your horses, but you had to have special outfits, and you had to have someone like read poetry to the queen. There was all these little rituals involved with being a jouster. It took a lot of money. So really, most jousters were courtiers of the queen, or gentlemen who were allowed to be in the court. So again, this doesn't fit the Stratford man, who it just has no connection to the court. And I think that ultimately was the reason why the great author's pen name was foisted on a man who was born with that name, because that particular man had no court connections. He was, and by doing so, it will decontextualize the works. And I think that's what happened. But of course, I believe this happened after the Stratford man had died, and also the great author had both died. It was somebody else. And we can get into that intrigue. But basically, I'm trying to put down the notion that the great author was a Stratford man for the reasons that I've been showing you.
Right.
Also, it's important to note that he was involved in the theater. I don't deny that. The first connection that we have with the Stratford man to the theater was in 1595 when a man named William Shakespeare and two actors were allowed to receive a payment for performance. So that's definitely a theater connection, but it's just a payment, just to receive a payment. It's not a payment as a writer. It was for a performance.
Right.
And he was, keep in mind, he was 30 years old at this point. This is the first connection we have to the Stratford man in the theater. If you look at the Stratford man's life, what do they call his early 20s? They call it the lost years. They have no information on him at all. And you're talking about thousands or hundreds of scholars who have been searching for new information on his life, and they're finding nothing about his education, how he came to London, how he got into the theater. All this it's a blank. They don't know when he wrote anything. They don't know when he wrote Hamlet. It's all a big zero. His whole literary life is a zero. And when you add up all these zeros, it leads you to the idea that the name was a pen name.
So was it, we had, here we go. Could his pen name be a different one? And that was from J.V. Noseworthy out of the Newfoundland or Newfoundland, depending on how you want to say it. So apparently this was more so a pen name, or was it done because a lot of what Shakespeare is credited of writing was shots at some pretty powerful people, and they wanted to deflect the, they cut people's heads off back then, folks, so was that,
and their hands, one person got their hand cut off.
Yeah. And if you were, forget Henry VIII. I mean, he didn't divorce him. He just killed him. But, what a great way. Like, we'll just point to the village idiot. And, I don't know how educated the masses were that weren't in the higher ends, the royal court and all that. So would they believe that, this idiot or the fool was the writer, or did it just buy them time to deflect it?
The world, the literary world, while the great author was alive, they had no association with the great author and Stratford-on-Avon. Zero. There was zero connection. The first connection happened in 1623. The Stratford man was dead. The great author was dead. And they inserted in a book called the First Folio today. If you want to show the image, it's number 6.
I apologize. Is the next one, I'm assuming.
Yes.
That's it.
There.
I apologize. My Shakespeare is very limited.
That's okay. This is the opening pages of, we call it today the First Folio. A folio is a large page size. So and this was the first edition of it. So it's a large pages of 36 Shakespeare plays. Okay. This is the very first time when I think for the first time about 18 or 20 plays of Shakespeare first appeared in print. If this book didn't happen, we would not have that. We would only have about 20 Shakespeare plays or 18. So this is a very important book, very expensive book to put together. And it was in the opening pages of this book, and also the front page, that makes you think that the great author was a Stratford man, first showing a gentleman. And the Stratford man was a gentleman, okay? He signed in one document William Shakespeare Gent. That's how he identified himself, which kind of was a step up from everybody else, a half step up. And as you open the opening pages, you have a letter written by two actors called Hemmings and Condell. And in it, they say that Shakespeare was their friend and fellow, which means that the great author supposedly was of their class, also like actors.
Yeah.
And then you go further into it. There's a poem to Shakespeare written by Ben Jonson, who was a dramatist. And he refers to Shakespeare's as Sweet Swan of Avon. And then you go a few more pages more into the preface, and there's a poem by somebody else, and he refers to Shakespeare's Stratford Monument. So you put monument and Shakespeare, Swan of Avon, you put those two together, and people who are reading this book are going to think, oh, okay, William Shakespeare came from Stratford-on-Avon. And it was from this point on that everybody believed that scenario, with absolutely no evidence to account for it. It's just a hinting that he was from Stratford-on-Avon. These are two different words on two different pages. But if you do go to the church in Stratford-on-Avon, there is a church, a monument to Shakespeare in Stratford-on-Avon. And if you want to see it, we can go to number 2. So the image on the right is what the monument looks like today, a man holding a pen and paper. And if you look at the image on the left, that is an engraving that was made in 1630, right around that area. And then it was published in a book a few decades later. And if you can see, the man's holding a sack. He's not holding a pen and paper.
Right.
So, and there's other little details that are totally different. If you look at the on the top of the pillars, like the capstone, the capital, or whatever you want to call it, it's a different decoration than what's on the left.
The left is a Corinthian, is more Corinthian.
Right? But you can see on top of it these little leopard heads.
Right.
And they're gone. So it's very clear that the monument was changed. Okay.
And
there was always a monument, but it's not like the one that we have today. And so I go into detail in that.
Right.
In my
The
book.
one that we have today, I mean, is that, whose crest is that?
That's the Stratford man. He had his own crest.
He had his own crest.
What does the sack have to do with writing classics like King Lear?
Yes, that's a wonderful question, Mark.
Thank you,
Wish
Mark.
I could answer it for you.
You're going to graduate this class pretty well. Maybe it was like a sack for, pardon the expression, but a sack of garbage. You know, like you're full of it type of thing versus the quail.
I like that.
I mean, people often use it. You're full of, I'm not going to say it. There are kids here and Mark's here. I don't want to upset him, but like the one on the left is more of a worker. They would carry the sacks because they worked in a field versus the right side where you'll have some form of education. They have the quail in their hands, the quill, and then they have a vellum there, and it's totally opposite. Notice on the top as well, you have, what did most workers do? They use the shovel to shovel in labor, and then and then on the right side you have afterwards they would drink. Versus if you were royalty or you were upper crust, you wouldn't have a shovel in your hands to save your life. You would be drinking, and then the other thing would have been probably something denounce, giving power or saying, hey, he was upper crust.
Well, actually, he's not holding like a glass of whatever. It's an hourglass.
Well, again,
the
that
right.
goes with labor, right? So that would be with labor if you want to look at it. I used to do a lot of stuff with architecture. That's why I'm looking at the everything on the left-hand side for me promotes labor and worker bee versus the right-hand side, which you kind of can't. I wish I could zoom in, and I apologize, but there's more skulls on it, and you're sitting on top of skulls means that you're the boss more so than anything else back in the day.
Drink from the skull of your enemy.
Oh, that's next episode, Mark.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting interpretation. Yeah, I think some people have described it as like with time you will like dig and get at the truth or something. I think there's no exact interpretation there. But back to the sack, the Stratford man's father dealt in wool, so that very well may be a wool sack because it's holding up on its own. It's not like it's grain that would move around, so it could be something light. And actually, there's a theory that this is really a picture of the Stratford man's father, John, who was a wool dealer. That it was originally his monument that later they kind of mussed around with it and turned it into a monument to the great author.
At a distance here, I'm looking at it at a bigger image, and I've zoomed in on it. Because from the distance, the right, I mean, I got to be honest, that sack looks more like a dead pig. The right side looks like a curly tail. And if you look at the way the snout is, I'm just going to zoom in and see if we can get it on that. It kind of looks like a pig. And more so than a sack because of, for multiple reasons. And that also is, you don't want to be associated with swine. That is not an upper cruster. That is not somebody that is, semi-royalty to a certain degree. I wish I could zoom in on it.
And there's a difference in the mustaches that Katherine can go into.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Too bad you can't zoom in, but
I'm going to throw up this image right here.
Yeah, the engraving on the left, he has a drooping mustache and a full beard. I don't know if you can tell, but if you look at the one on the right, he has an upturned mustache and a little goatee. So
yeah, I'm going to go to the one on the right.
Another
on my phone while I
difference. Yeah.
That looks like the one on the right is definitely someone who has had some kind of access to grooming properly in presentation. No, seriously. I mean, these are little clues way back when. There's tons of stories. I have family that goes back to England, the town of Bowden, or Bowden. That's where part of it comes from. And apparently there's a crest. I get no residuals, so I don't care at this point. Hello, peasants. But someone actually, again, Paranormal Newfoundland podcast, she says, could it be an old-fashioned cartoon mocking him? And I'm thinking that someone came up with, let's mock him. It's really weird. I've seen this before where someone is kind of being treated like they're taking advantage of somebody. So they go, oh, we'll make you a medal or something like that, and they think, oh my God, they love me. We're, trying to bring them in. And then that person is really the goat. They're getting not the greatest of all times, mind you, like the one that like they make into a jackass.
Bryan, speaking of the mocking, Katherine can discuss the couplet at the end of To the Reader from the uh, cut, woodcut.
Right, that's in the folio.
The other, the other one,
The number number
6.
6, yeah.
That one.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
John. Yeah.
this is back to the first folio, and Ben Jonson wrote this little poem there to the reader, and just the last couple lines: "Reader, look not on his picture, but his book." So you have this very ugly image, and
Right.
Johnson, who's a dramatist, he tells you, don't look at it, read the book, meaning the reading the great author's works will tell you about him and describe him more than this image. And actually, many actually see this image as a mask. If you look under the ear, you can see barely, you can see two lines next to each other, almost as if you can just pull off a mask. And of course, the big head looks kind of wooden and the hair looks a little artificial. So, there could have been that message in there as well.
Yeah, it's, not, I mean, people looked crazy back then. They had I forgot what they're called, that wraps around their neck. Everything was poofy and puffy and, over the top. And this doesn't seem that way. And I don't know if pattern baldness was something of importance back then, but I would think someone who had their hair and their looks and whatever. I think it was Marlowe that, he was in the theater and he had in whatever the paintings were, more of an attractiveness to him. And so that's why, like, don't look at if Marlowe had anything to do with it, and they say, like, don't look at the actor, read the work. That's where the beauty is. It's not the guy that wrote it or whatever. This is all fascinating. I mean, there are so many people in the world. I think I'm from the streets at this point. That I think there's a ton of people that love Shakespeare, and hey, if that's your thing, no problem. But there's so many people today that seem to like fight for it. Like they want to go to go to blows over, like, did William Shakespeare? Of course he wrote it. I'm like, well, you don't really know, and it's just very interesting.
Many people are very passionate about it. I've met them. And they I think, like the romantic idea that somebody who came from very humble beginnings turned out to be the greatest writer, in my opinion, who ever lived, certainly in England. And
Right.
with no education, no connections, nothing, just on his own will of spirit. And it's just not realistic.
No,
during this period,
it's really
being
not
raised
realistic.
by illiterate parents, having at best a little bit of a grammar school education, having as far as we know, no mentors, or sponsors, tutors. Where did all this knowledge come from? And keep in mind too that his children were illiterate. And
Right.
and also they didn't claim that he was the author, great author, and actually the Stratford man himself didn't claim this. So
Right.
it's kind of a big knockout, and even the town of Stratford-on-Avon didn't even acknowledge that the great author came from there for over 100 years after the Stratford man had died. So it's just a dead space. It's a zero everywhere you look. And what about when the Stratford man died? nobody took any notice of it in April 23rd, 1616. Nobody wrote a tribute to him or a poem saying, sorry, he died, or, the man who wrote Hamlet, my God, he's gone. Nothing.
Yeah.
Zero. And
Kind of. Yeah.
yet that was the tradition back then for contemporary writers. If one of their contemporaries died, someone would write some
Yeah.
little something. Someone
Ode
would
to
take notice.
Marlowe.
Usually within a year of death, usually.
Right.
And yet the first tribute we get is in the first folio, which we've just been talking about. And that was 7 years after the Stratford man had died. So what's going on?
Do you think
it's a dead end everywhere you look?
It is a dead end, but do you think that they're trying to, I don't know how it worked back then. Did they sell books or were they just acquired? Because there was a cost involved in the printing, and then it's not like they're mass printing things. It's hand done. So if you were a king, queen, or whatever, royalty, and you had the money, you usually had some kind of book or paper or vellum. That wasn't readily available to anyone. You had to have some kind of financial something, or like you said, a sponsor. And I'm gonna pull back on my question, where someone auditing the education and watching people and just listening and trying to make themselves better on a free route. You still don't know how to write. So how are you, unless you are saying this to somebody, you're speaking it? Because I know people that can't write for the life of them, but they know how to articulate things, and if someone can write it down, it will sound very well. Actually, there's some teams that write together where someone's like really quick on the keyboards or whatever it is, and they free flow.
Abbott and Costello.
Lou and Abbott Costello. No. No. Well, what Mark said, and it's just, I've seen this before, but everything for considering the time period, considering like the ruralness and all this other stuff. I mean, why would you? It just doesn't make sense. And I'm loving this because they forced us to read Shakespeare, in a little bit in middle school, like late middle school, but high school, it was Shakespeare. And then if you had to take a lit class in college, they'll throw something like Midsummer's Night Dream or whatever, Oberon, and right, give it a rest. I mean,
well, these plays are 400 years old, right? But they're still being performed today. Shakespeare, I know when you're a kid, it's hard to read it and everything, but he was, he's a titan of Western civilization. And he is important to read. You read the sonnets, it's like music. You read it out loud. And the sonnets also reveal so much about the great author, who he was. So it's very important to know who he was. And that's just it. We don't know anything about a literary life for the Stratford man, but how are you, if you don't have a biography, how are you going to relate to the works, the plays? And that could be a reason why people shy away from Shakespeare. If they knew that he was a nobleman, one of the highest ranked noblemen in the land, who had a passion for writing plays and poems and was writing entertainment for the Queen, I think people would be more interested if they knew that the Queen threw him in the tower, that it was rumored that they had a relationship, things like this. If you had more elements of biography to hold on to, you may be more inspired to read the Shakespeare works, and you have better comprehension of them. But right now, you have a black and white. You have like a zero as in the biography.
Right.
So
It would be interesting. I mean, does anybody teach a class that's kind of anti-Shakespeare, where they say we're going to break this down and show you how he may not be the author for all of it, or he may not be, and
No, I would
compare
say
the
not
differences?
at the university level, but there are some like classes in association with university. I forget the name of it. In Oregon, they have lifelong learning.
Yep.
I don't know the exact name in Oregon, and they've had several um, speakers giving classes on this topic, and they're excellent. One is by Dr. Earl Showerman, um, and yeah, so, and another one, Tom Woosnam. He's English, and he teaches that. But this is for more retired people. It's not
It's people that
contemporary students. Yeah.
want to drive deeper, and it's really interesting. I have a friend who we do a lot. He does paranormal stuff, but he's an author. And I put together his books. We're actually working on a book right now. You will definitely know the difference between his parts and my part. I write very well. I need an editor. And I say this all the time. Everybody that has ever edited my book, including my brother, would say, "Oh, the E is so silent you don't even include it." And I'm like, "Yep." But I do have I can pick up on styles, and I've picked up on styles. I wasn't a voracious reader growing up. Later on in life, I started reading, and I like certain styles of certain books. Like I always liked Tony Hillerman. I like the indigenous feel to him. I liked Michael Crichton. Great books in faction, but terrible movies. But I'm a big poetry person, so I know about the meter and then the rhythm and the cadence throughout it. And my friend Ron Murphy Jr., he's an amazing writer. He writes at an academic level, and I told him a couple of times, I'm like, you got to dumb it down. Not that I don't enjoy it, but your target audience is not in the academics. And he got a review once that said, I didn't know I had to get a college degree to read this book about vampires. And he treasures that because it just shows what he was like. And you can see the difference when Ron talks about stuff. There's a flow to it. There's music to it. If this man Shakespeare is uneducated, has no money, has nothing, is living in abject poverty, and he does odd jobs and eventually does acting because you're going to pay me? Okay, I'll go. I wish there was notes on people meeting him to hear the dialogue between them, because you would know right off the bat. When you're talking to somebody, they're like, there's no way they wrote that.
Well, he was not from abject poverty. His father was an alderman of the town, and he was, he, like I said, he dealt in wool, and he may have been a glover. So, I mean, he wasn't like a courtier, but I wouldn't say he lived in abject
Something
poverty.
more than
Yes.
others. Instead of,
Yeah.
okay.
I would just say humble beginnings.
Humble
And
beginnings. That's nice.
but it's a good point about writing for your audience, and anyone who reads Shakespeare knows right off the bat that who was his audience? Some people who were very highly educated. Who are those
Right.
people? Those were the nobility and the courtiers. And in fact, it turns out that a lot of Shakespeare plays, and I wrote a paper on this, were actually performed decades earlier than they think. And it's important to note that, first off, we don't know when any of the Shakespeare plays were written. There is no evidence. Any sort of list that you see with a Shakespeare play dating, there's a question mark after it, right? So,
Right.
you look at the Queen's records of her revels, her entertainments. You look through those which have survived, and a fantastic example is One of the titles is The History of Error, and this was in 1577. So what does that sound like? It sounds like Shakespeare's The Comedy of Errors, right?
Yes.
Yet the Stratford man was like 14 at the time, right? It couldn't have been written by him.
No.
So, and there's several other parallels like that, which I quoted in our paper.
Yeah, there's almost like an entire generational difference, or a little bit more, between the what Catherine, what you are proposing and the traditional view that we all learn about in high school.
And I just wanted to share your Shakespeare-Suppressed.com, where you can get more information about Catherine. You can buy books, which is really, really important. You want to buy some books, you can contact her. And if you start reading what she's presented there, it's really intriguing. And you're going to want to get a copy of this. This is going to be a longer read. I am reading it. It's just going to take me a while because I'm fighting my Shakespeare demons that I got.
One of the nicest parts of Catherine's book is chapter 4, where she's talking about this sonnet was first published in the Passionate Pilgrim in 1598-99, when the Stratford man was 34 years old. Okay, and then you look at when some of the sonnets were written at around the same time. Catherine makes a great point about, in sonnet 71, he writes, "When I am dead." How many 30-year-olds are writing about being on death's doorstep and my lameness and tanned antiquity and all this other stuff? There's more evidence that the traditional biography does not add up to the more autobiographical sonnets.
Right. And that's a good point, Mark. And like for sonnet 62, I mean, the great author tells you who he is. He says, "Methinks no face so gracious is as mine." So he's saying his face is gracious. Gracious was a term that he used in the plays only to describe the nobility or royalty. So, I mean, he's telling you something there. And if you go to the canopy image that Mark wanted us to see for sonnet 125, that's also telling.
Is this
it? Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So there's Queen Elizabeth I. She's on some sort of contraption where they can hold her and walk her through the streets, and all her courtiers are surrounding her. If you look at sonnet 125, the great author says, "Were it aught to me, I bore the canopy with my extern the outward honoring." So what does that mean? Were it aught to me, ought means anything. So was it anything to me that I was holding the canopy? Well, that's all. It can only mean this, holding the canopy over the queen or the monarch. It was a tradition to do that. Who could have that honor? It was always somebody, a very important person or a titled person.
Yeah, I don't see any bakers in there.
No, I mean, you're talking about dukes and earls and Duke of Earl and Knights Templar. Knights, Sir Knights. Those are part of the court. I mean, it's really interesting. Isn't there something suspect about how he died too, or was that just Marlowe? One of them was
Marlowe. That was Marlowe. Yeah.
It's like it would have been better if there was something suspect about the way Shakespeare died,
and because if Shakespeare
that would add to it.
Yeah, if the great author were a nobleman, it would make sense that he'd want to use a pen name, right? Because back then there was a social code, And you should what's a what you should be doing as a nobleman or somebody who's highly ranked, you should be serving your monarch. You should be like a judge or a general or a counselor or something. Uh, not You should not be hanging around at the theater and writing plays and poems. That should not be your main occupation. So the great author would not want it to be known that he was. So he used a pseudonym. I think he originally wrote anonymously. And when I mentioned that, there were court plays, he was really, the great author was writing plays for Queen Elizabeth first and foremost. And in them were probably some little satirizations of various courtiers, which made her laugh, right? I mean, they weren't mean. They were just like little lampoons. So I think that's really the true profile of the great author. And
What?
and also, even a contemporary wrote that Shakespeare was he was an amateur. He was not a professional. And there were other things they said about him. They said that he wrote anonymously. They wrote that he was a man of high rank, that he was a patron, that he was a generous patron, that he was known to university students, and that praise would disparage him. Praise of his works would disparage him, would disparage his name. So, I mean, these are little items that seem to get overlooked in most Shakespeare biographies because it doesn't accord with the Stratford man, right? So,
Right. So if you look at everybody that has been associated as the potential candidate for William Shakespeare, from Bacon to Marlowe to the Earl, one of the things I would add, this just came to me, is how interesting would it be if one of them, being in the royal, near the Queen and carrying, what if one of them was having an affair with the Queen? And she, these are like love poems to the Queen, but if it gets out, off with your head. So what better way to do it is to disguise it as something to protect themselves and their affair, and the Queen still gets the enjoyment of it, and someone else gets the blame. It's like this is what like my kids do. Like, I didn't do it, they did it. Like whatever. Has there ever been? I don't know if you've even researched this, but any thought that someone there, like Marlowe, being, if you look at some of the paintings of him, he wasn't a bad looking guy. Not to say the Queen was a piece to look at, but there could have been something there. And in order to not get killed, especially if you're going down, you're the Queen, you should be marrying someone who is upper crust.
Well, I think some of Shakespeare's sonnets refer to her, and maybe a couple were written to her, but they're unnamed. I think it's possible. The Earl of Oxford, who I think is the true author, there was some rumor that he was having an affair with the Queen, some implication.
There always is.
Yes.
It's kind of like if you look at Princess Diana and you look at her two kids, William and Harry. Harry looks an awful lot like a someone else. And it's
I've heard that rumor. Yeah.
If you really take a look at the pictures, you're like, yeah, that's the dad. And one of the reasons supposedly Harry he split wasn't because he got married, it was because if you're not true blood, off with your head. If they took out, rumor again, Diana was supposedly taken out, but there's a lot of rumors to that. And you see that and you're like, well, time to go. I'm not coming back to the castle. And, you push it too far. So that's really interesting because that would be a great angle.
But also, it's been well accepted for at least a few hundred years that Lord Burleigh, who was the Queen's top counselor and the Lord Treasurer of England, that he was being lampooned in Hamlet, that he was the counselor Polonius. And it's for various reasons why you can see that. Like, for example, the original name in the first edition when Hamlet was printed, the original name of Polonius was Corambus, which means one two-hearted or something like that. Yeah, two-hearted. And that is like a play on Lord Burleigh's motto, which is in Latin, which means like one-hearted. So, and there's other things in there that would point to Lord Burleigh as Polonius. And this is accepted by historians. How could the Stratford man, who not only has no known connection to Burleigh, to satirize him, but how would he get away with it? I mean, one of the most powerful men in England being made fun of on the public stage. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Did Oxford have a connection to Burleigh?
Yes, he did. He was his son-in-law.
Oh,
the Earl of Oxford married Burleigh's daughter, Anne Cecil. So that's one connection right there. But if you actually, Hamlet is a portrayal of the Earl of Oxford. I mean, if you look at it, he's a nobleman. He was a university student. His father died suddenly. His mother remarried fairly soon afterwards. Pirates attacked his ship. That's in Hamlet. All of this happened to the Earl of Oxford. And yeah, that's a portrait of Lord Burleigh.
Lord Burleigh.
After the pirate attack, he washed up on shore naked.
Well, they stripped him down to his shirt. That's what is said. So all of the wonderful possessions that he took, he was on a grand tour of Europe. He spent the most amount of time in Italy, and of course, several Shakespeare plays are set in Italy. And on his way back home, his ship was raided by pirates, and he lost everything. And that was one problem. And then that was the start of his problems. When he got home, there was more problems. It was rumored that his child that was his wife gave birth while he was away was not his child. So he had that problem.
And that's a problem.
That's also reflected in 4 Shakespeare plays about questioning one's fiance or wife, their fidelity. You see it in Othello.
Yeah, there's a ton of there's a ton of. What was interesting about
that theme affected the great author. That was a problem, and he didn't want to work it out in the plays.
Yeah, that such autobiographical material just showing up in a play, and it fits the Earl of Oxford's, what we know of him. That doesn't sound like just a coincidence.
Yeah. I just after listening to this and the discussion, you just can see like someone was seething, like they were kind of either they got the short end of the stick or they were pissed off, and they were like, "Oh, okay, I got you now." And someone came out and had their best revenge by ripping individuals to shreds. And what's greater than doing it without them even having the education to understand that's being done? That's someone who's really devious, which I think is kind of a classic. It's all Shakespearean. I mean, we have to call it Shakespearean because we don't have proof. I mean, it'd be great. Let's go in Mark invent a time machine so we can go back and talk to William Shakespeare.
You can do that by watching the movie Anonymous, and Katherine was praised by Sir Derek Jacobi But so can you just give us a brief recount of what was going on there with Sir Derek Jacobi promoting Shakespeare Suppressed?
Well, he didn't promote it, but he wrote me a very nice email saying that.
That's promoting.
Yeah, we had it built.
Well,
That's
okay,
a promotion.
yeah.
Your research is fantastic and continually thrilling as each new fact wings off the page.
Yeah, you have it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
You can't see that I'm actually surrounded by books. I'm about ready to cause Janet's desk to collapse. That's promotion. That's saying
that is
something really
promotion
nice
and
about the
praise.
quality of your research.
yes. And Derek Jacobi is an Oxfordian, and so is Mark Rylance, who ran the Globe Theater for several years, and he's also a knight like you, Sir Derek and Sir Mark Rylance.
Well, I'm a Knights Templar versus what a regular knight over in the UK. I still am an American, so I don't do that, but I do follow certain the aspects of the knights, the original Knights Templar, and the faith and all that other good stuff there. Do you have plans to continue on with Shakespeare, or are you tackling like some other controversy in the future?
Well, I'm working on a new book, and it has to do with Shakespeare and the art world. So I guess I'm a slow writer. It took me 7 years to write Shakespeare Suppressed. And this one's been about 4 or 5 now. So it should be soon. I'll let you know.
Was this given birth from writing about Shakespeare? You're like, there's a connection here.
Yeah, there's a connection. There's a definite connection. Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting. One of the reasons why people put Sir Francis Bacon involved in it is because of the travel, the scientific end of it. You have to be really, really intelligent. So he knows quantitatively how to manipulate. And there's a lot of rumor that Francis Bacon had connections to Knights Templar and, the individuals with, it gets into the Ark of the Covenant and some crazy stuff, but that's pretty interesting. When do you think that will be out?
I'm hoping to finish the text this year, maybe next year.
Hey, I get it. Ron's going to kill me because I've been writing my portion. Life goes on. I mean, you go through life, you're interacting with people. There's good days, there's bad days. And some days you just don't want to sit there and talk about like, well, the hell with Shakespeare. I don't care what he did,
No, that never happened to me. But yeah, it just, maybe I'm a slow writer. But when you're doing research, sometimes it takes 3 days to write one line that's is accurate. So
no, it's important because what you're basing stuff on, it's different than doing like faction. So that's fiction with some fact in it where you like, is it real? Is it not real? When you're basically, this is I mean, I would love to see them take your book and do that Ken Burns vibe to it, and then let's try to get Ken Burns, if he's still around, to take on Shakespeare Suppressed, because that would be really interesting to get this is something that is so PBS. you know what I'm saying?
By the way, the cover is a painting of the Earl of Oxford that I discovered. And you can see he was a very much a flamboyant dresser in his early days. Here he's about 31, age 31.
Look at this picture and check out the mustache on it. And now,
I mean, you're a reincarnation of him, Bryan.
Who? No, I'm not. Actually, at one point I did have that little thing going there and whatever, and I just don't have the jowls for the full beard and non-full beard. It looked like Curly from the Three Stooges, but the similarities between the Shakespearean monument, we went into that with the same type of mustache and style on the right hand side as it is with the Earl. So it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Back then. I think this is great.
The hat that he's wearing was a gift from the Queen. It's hard to see, but it's a black hat with a feather, and it's documented that she gave him a black hat with pearl and gold buttons, and that's what the hat looks like here. So I think that's one of the real strong identifiers that this is the Earl of Oxford.
And what about the colors of his outfit he's wearing? That does correspond with the Oxford family. The viewers can't see his entire clothes he's wearing, but can you tell us a little bit about his outfit from the painting?
Well, it's green and white, like stripes, and then he has a cape. He's wearing a cape, and he has orange sleeves. Is that what you're alluding to, Mark?
Yeah. And your friend wrote the analysis of his clothing in your.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the orange was his family color, which is reading tawny. It's kind of an orangish color, kind of a burnt orange, and that's similar to what the sleeves are. Sorry, I don't have the full image, but anyway.
And I'm putting up my MAGA, which is Make Capes Great Again. I think we need more capes to come back out.
Yeah, Bryan, you need to start wearing a
cape, Mark. Nope, I'm not wearing a cape. I'm not wearing a chapeau. I'm not wearing any of that stuff.
Or the ruff around the neck.
You know what?
A lot of starch.
Yeah, people in this day and age were like, "Oh, what happened? You get into an accident?" It would look like they were in a neck brace. No, I'm noble. No, you're not. You look like you hurt yourself. Really, really odd dress fittings there. I think they should make jousting great again too. That would be fun. Like, hey kids, break it up. Nope, we're gonna joust in the parking lot afterwards. That would be interesting.
Well, I think they have. Don't they have Renaissance fairs still?
They do. Something very interesting. Since we're in this whole English, they have. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. If you've ever seen Ultimate Fighting, the Octagon, where two guys go in and beat the hell out of each other and kick them and whatever, they now have it medieval style. So they're dressed as knights with, swords and what have you, or the lances, and they're in a cage together. It is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, and I'm like, we've really just, as they say, jumped the shark at this point in humanity. People are going to look back 100 years from now, Catherine, and go, "Oh my God!" Shake their head.
Well, actually, jousting was a medieval sport, and it was revived during Henry VII's reign, and it carried on into Queen Elizabeth. That was Henry VII was her grandfather. And it carried on, and so she had jousting tournaments, and the Earl of Oxford won 2 of them. So he was a sportsman as well.
It was kind of contemporary with who's it, Henri II in France, that Nostradamus predicted he was going to die. That was a jousting accident.
Yes.
Well.
Yes. Yeah, it was dangerous.
Mom always said, don't joust in the house. It was. There he goes. Here it is. Ulrich von Liechtenstein, Knight's Tale reference. There you go. That was from the movie Knight's Tale. But I just think it is kind of, it's very interesting. And part of me wants to make sure Shakespeare didn't write it. So to all of you for making us read this. I understand why they did make us read it. It's not my favorite. Some people really at a young age were like, wow, that sounds so nice. And it's, I'm like, yeah, if you want to talk, we had one person, it was a girl in the class. I went to art and design in New York City, and we were doing like old English type of poetry and verse and whatever. And Shakespeare, of course, was there. And thou hast passed me the salt. I'm like, no, they just started talking because they thought it was really nice. And everybody was like, can you cut it out? It was just bizarre. But you know what? I do appreciate you coming on our program, Third Eye Live. I appreciate Mark being here, even though he's in the Italian restaurant, wherever that may be.
Yeah, I was young. I was 18.
You're always welcome back, Catherine. I want people to go grab the book, so please grab the book. There it is.
Oh God, I'm thankful.
And then you can decide if he did it or didn't do it.
Right. Thank you.
But please come back whenever it is. When you finish writing the other one, because that could be very, very interesting, showing pieces of art and
my mom told me I wasn't
how it all gels. Yes, Mark.
I have a whole bunch of stuff that just due to having a broadcast from downtown Rome, next to the Vatican, with all the pizza and pasta being served behind
the Papal people observing the Pope that has passed away.
But I have so much materials here. I didn't get to see because of the
landslide,
underground grotto broadcasting. But we're gonna have to do this again.
Yes,
there's just a lot of visual aids I didn't get to.
I have no problems about that, and we can reschedule and we can come back and revisit Shakespeare, and you'll be the point of it, and I'll just share. I'll talk as always, but the visual aids do help the audience. A lot of people, that's why comic books got a big swing up, because people, although they've gotten very literate in the comic book, but it was to get people involved in reading and whatever to a certain degree. But visual aids really do help.
Because I have, like I was saying before the show started, I have the Wilton House official guidebook. There's hidden Shakespeare information. You have Kubrick filming in there, Leonardo da Vinci. So I just wasn't able to incorporate all that time. We have to do this again.
Well, I'll do it again. I mean, I have no problems with it. I don't know if Catherine would like to come back on. You're more than welcome to.
I'd be very happy to. Yeah.
I think it would be great. I actually just saw Da Vinci Immersive, because I was actually on a meeting for marketing purposes to do some marketing, and they showed me Da Vinci Immersive, which was kind of cool. I think they could do that with Shakespeare in many ways, which would be interesting. But the Da Vinci thing is just, it's 360, it's all over, and you can touch the walls. And how cool would it be to get a pen and to start writing and it would appear on the wall? That's something to look into.
We can cover Leda and the Swan.
Well, it's,
and we'd be publicizing it better than anyone else on Third Eye Live. and then we can get Laura to join in with her commentaries.
Yes, we do miss her. I hope she is well. I hope the family is well. But I think that would be great. So we'll figure something out. We'll do it maybe after the summer, if that's all right with you. And I hope you do have a good summer. I probably will be finished with the book sometime midsummer because my kid does protest too much.
Yeah.
And one of them was the older one started reading Shakespeare, and she's like, I don't get it. So you have to kind of oh, what does this mean? And you have to put it in their terms that they use now, the slang. And
just tell her to read it out loud.
Yeah.
And hear the music. Tell her that, and she might appreciate it on that level.
She probably would. I told her to get the Cliff Notes. She's like, what are those? I'm like, before ChatGPT, there was a book called Cliff Notes. and you know what? A lot of teachers never got on that and gave you crap for reading it, but it did break it down nicely. It breaks down all the Shakespeare stuff, Romeo and Juliet. So you're like, oh, okay. That's what it means. But I do appreciate everybody coming in. I really do. Thank you. I thank you again for the book. Hopefully one day I will be able to see you or meet you, and I can bring the book and I can go, can you autograph it for me? I love autograph books. It's just something I do. My dad used to, he was paparazzi. So he did a lot of books for people, and I have a lot of autographed copies of books and other things. He worked Wide World Photos. So I just enjoy it. It's just something that I could tell my kids, don't throw that out because it has an autograph in it. Not that people collect anything today, because none of these kids collect anything. I'm surprised they even read Shakespeare at this point, But I wonder what.
We're here to change that.
We could change that, but it'd be interesting though. I don't know if you ever thought of this, Catherine. I'm wondering if you can use AI technology to put in different works, put in a series of different works and say, can you divide these works into who you feel the same author was?
It was done in The Winter's Tale.
Oh, it was? Okay. Where they put them into the computer and they said, no, this leans more towards this person based off of historical documents. That would be great. This would be great. I got to figure out, do I know anybody? Does anybody know Ken Burns? And if you can, send me their information, because I want to send Ken Burns over to Catherine. I want this made into a mini series on PBS.
That would be brilliant.
Yeah,
you're the TV guy.
Yeah, well, I'll figure this out. I'm trying to figure this out. I personally, I think it would be great, actually, if you look into it and break it down, and then you get yourself on there and some other, you'll get the left side, the right side, and then you get the middle side. Well, that'll play both ends of the spectrum. That would be great. That's our new mission, Mark, to make sure Catherine is her books are made into a Ken Burns documentary series on PBS, where in mid-season, when they say, and the murderer is, they cut and they go, if you donate $25, you'll get this free bag. And then they hold you hostage for 30 minutes until they get enough donations. But thank you again, Catherine. I wish you a wonderful night, a blessed week, a blessed everything. And you're definitely coming back. We're just going to do, I like the art angle of it. Maybe we'll do a teaser on just the art angle. And then this way, Mr. Eddie, who's in the dark, will be here. And we can show some of the images to add to it.
Yeah, the only images of me is my appearances in Boys Gone Wild.
Is that a Snoop Dogg production, Mark?
Yeah. I think it's something like that. But I was young and needed the money.
There you go. I love Mark. Mark is fantastic. I appreciate you, and I thank you again for coming on. Next week we have Al Santariga coming into the studio, and I would send you a T-shirt that I designed, but I don't think you want to wear anything cryptid on you. So I do a lot of paranormal research, but this was fascinating, and it was a bit removed from a lot of people here like the paranormal and the strangeness, the high strangeness. this is high strangeness because this is a mystery. This is like a 48 hours mystery.
Can you do like remote viewing in the past?
I do remote viewing, and if you'd like me to, I mean, I can kind of try to remote view William Shakespeare, or who is William Shakespeare, and I can tell you what I get. I will actually work on that. I'm currently taking an online exam that will finish tomorrow. I got so tired, going through it. I was like, I failed one section. And they make you retake it. They don't want you to fail, so that's a good thing. But yeah, no, I can do that. That would be interesting.
Yes,
I've done certain things like that before, and I was surprised at what I found. But there's not many ways to prove it. But let me see what I get, and I will tell you. Yeah. I will tell you via. If my email is not working, I'll have the guy in the black square, Mark Eddy, send you a message saying Bryan did this or whatever. But again, everybody, I thank everybody for being here. Catherine, thank you for being here. Mark Eddy, thank you for being here.
Thanks. It was fun.
And look who shows up. The author himself, Ronald Murphy, who I did compare Ronald Murphy to when he writes. There's a cadence to it. There's a rhythm. It's beautiful. And I compared you to William Shakespeare, and you missed it. Go watch the replay, Ron. Like, I'm working on a book with him. He's ready to kill me at this point. I promise it's coming. But I thank you very much, Catherine. You have a blessed night. And if it wasn't for everybody, and you, and for being here, Catherine, Mark Eddy, and everybody that's been in the chat, I wouldn't be able to do this because talking to yourself will get you a straitjacket. But thank you, and we'll see you in about a week. Mark, you have anything else to add on the new book, or we'll bring it in next week?
No, we'll be talking about the new book sometime soon, but
okay.
It's just called Lakes, Lizards, Linton, and Leverett. It's on Amazon.
Awesome. So everybody go out and buy it, and we're gonna go get it. But good night, everybody.
Night. Thank you.
You, it's always been you. God showed me you. I have been searching decades for you. I found you, I lost you. My heart is broken without you. My soul aches for you. I need you, I want you. My days are filled with you. I've seen the future with you. My home is with you. I have felt the future with you. My nights are filled with you. Love is you. True love is you. My happiness is you. Every past life is with you. My dreams are filled with you. Life is meaningless without you. My future is with you. I will fight for you. I will defend you. I will give up my life for you. Whatever it takes for you. Nothing else matters but you. I love you. I love you. I love you. God showed me you. I have been searching decades for you. I found you, I lost you. My heart is broken without you. My soul aches for you. I need you, I want you. My days are filled with you. I have seen the future with you. My home is with you. I have felt the future with you. My nights are filled with you. Love is you, true love is you. Love is you, true love is you. My happiness is you. Every past life is with you. My dreams are filled with you. Life is meaningless without you. My future love you, I love you. Life is meaningless without you. My future is with you.